Funny how no one believes in you until it's too late, right? And the truth is that being counted out too early isn't a curse, it's a disguised blessing. When the world looks at you and thinks, that one won't go far, they're unknowingly giving you the greatest gift someone can receive, the freedom to grow without being noticed. Most people don't understand this, but those who have lived that silence know how much it hurts and how much it transforms. Few talk about this, but being underestimated creates a powerful strategic advantage. While they ignore you, you build yourself. While they laugh, you learn. While they point out flaws, you create roots. And here's the counterintuitive part. The earlier they count you out, the sooner you're free to become someone no one will be able to stop later. There you can't becomes fuel, and the strong kind. And there's more. The ones who wrote you off never expect you to come back. They never imagine you'll grow. They never believe you'll transform. And that's exactly why your rise will seem impossible until it happens. Because when you start working in the dark, away from the spotlight, with pain, focus, and consistency, you become a silent threat. You become exactly what no one saw coming. So if one day they counted you out, good. Don't get angry, smile. They've just placed you in the best starting point possible. The point where no one watches you, no one interferes, and no one tries to stop you. And that's where most legendary stories begin. Now the question is simple. What will you do with this silence? When someone is underestimated, it always feels like an insult at first, but for those who understand the game, it becomes a huge advantage. When no one believes in someone, that person gains a gift few know how to use: freedom. Freedom to test, to fail quietly, to grow without pressure. It's in that silence that mental toughness begins to form, almost effortlessly. And ironically, the world only notices when it's already too late. He realized that when people laughed at him, they were actually giving him fertile ground for a powerful identity shift. Because nothing shapes someone more than walking without applause. And that's exactly where relentless focus is born. That stubborn focus that grows when no one is watching. It's in the unseen work, the invisible labor, that character truly strengthens. Meanwhile, those who doubted keep thinking nothing has changed. The narrator always says silence is a weapon, but few understand how real that is. When someone works quietly, they remove the interference of eyes, opinions, and expectations. It's like training in an empty gym. The noise disappears, and only pure evolution remains. And even though it feels lonely, that's where mental toughness finds room to bloom. What once looked like defeat becomes preparation. Think about that friend who vanishes from the gym for months, and when he returns, he looks stronger. It wasn't magic, it was unseen work. He did what needed to be done, without announcing anything. This silent movement is what creates real power. While others want to show every step, those who understand the game prefer to sculpt in the dark. It's in the dark that gold melts into shape. It's in the dark that identity changes, without anyone noticing. Many people want to build reputation before building competence. And that's a classic mistake. The wise man plays differently. He builds first, then shows. When someone is underestimated, everything becomes lighter. No expectations, no pressure. This gives space for a deeper identity shift, because the change is not being watched. And change without surveillance is honest change. It's transformation in its purest form. Being underestimated is like having a shield against distractions. The person walks slowly but firmly. They don't need to answer to anyone. They don't need to prove anything. They just move. And the more they move, the more relentless focus strengthens, almost as if the absence of spotlight were fuel. It's the strategic advantage every great achiever has experienced, even without realizing it. A practical example? Investments. When the market underestimates a small company, the sharpest investors know there might be a huge return ahead. It's the same with people. The world sees little. The one who's growing sees a lot. And he uses that to keep expanding his mental toughness quietly. It's a silent move that always pays dividends later. Because the invisible prepares the inevitable. The underestimated person also learns a valuable skill: observation. When no one sees you as a threat, people talk around you without filtering. It's almost a competitive advantage. You see patterns, understand behaviors, notice opportunities. And all of this becomes strategic ammunition. While others waste energy trying to appear, the underestimated conserve energy to grow. And they grow better. And here's another truth no one mentions. When they underestimate you, you don't need to perform. You can study quietly, train quietly, change quietly. You can read books like Atomic Habits, Mindset, or The Power of Discipline without having to prove anything. You can fail 10 times without anyone noticing. Unseen work protects you, strengthens you, matures you. And when you show up, then there's no turning back. The world freezes. In the end, being underestimated is like staying backstage during your own evolution. You can test, adjust, evolve without an audience. And those who learn to love this silent process never again need early recognition, because they know the stage comes later. And it's exactly here that the next idea begins to pull the narrative forward. Silence is not just a gift, it's a strategy too powerful to ignore. He began to realize that silence wasn't the absence of action, but the purest form of strategic movement. While the common man shouted his routine on social media, he chose to withdraw to build something that didn't yet have shape. That quiet retreat became fuel for a mental toughness he didn't even know he had. Silence protected his relentless focus from the external noise, and every quiet minute became a declaration of strength. While most people seek validation, he sought evolution, and that simple trait ignited a powerful identity shift. It's like leaving the spectator mode and entering author of your destiny mode. Silence became fertile ground where he could learn without interruptions. Studies, readings, practices, everything grew in the shadows. And it was in those shadows that unseen work began transforming him from within. It's funny how silence bothers people who live for appearances. But for those truly growing, it becomes a refuge. He used silence as a filter. Everything that didn't help simply stopped existing in his mind. That strengthened his mental toughness, almost like a daily workout. And as focus increased, relentless focus became almost automatic. It's impressive what you hear when you stop trying to be heard. A practical example? Someone studying for a public exam. Those who tell the whole world usually quit midway because they carry the weight of expectations. But those who study quietly, consuming books like Diarito Administrativo Descomplicado or the Manual de Diarito Constitutional, go far. Because silence doesn't pressure, it guides. It's the birthplace of disciplined and consistent unseen work. The common man needs to announce every step to convince others, and himself, that he's moving forward. But the disciplined man doesn't. He prefers to let results announce for him. This silent behavior is part of a deep identity shift, where he no longer seeks approval, only progress. When no one is watching, he works lighter, faster, freer. Silence becomes an operational advantage. It was in silence that he learned to turn pain into method. Instead of complaining, he studied. Instead of asking for support, he trained. Instead of explaining himself, he executed. This simple, quiet approach built a mental toughness that people only understand when they see the impact. And the impact always comes. Unseen work has this interesting trait. It takes time, but it never fails to bloom. One curious detail is that when you work quietly, your mind becomes less agitated, less internal noise, less anxiety, fewer doubts. This creates space for relentless focus to become a habit, not an effort. Silence becomes a kind of spiritual airplane mode. Nothing enters, nothing interferes, and as a natural result, execution accelerates. Once someone experiences this, they guard their silence like gold. Sometimes he laughed at the contrast. While some filmed 15-second stories saying they were going to study, he studied for 2 hours without saying anything. And guess who progressed more? Silence removes the need to prove and frees energy to do. This simple detour creates a massive invisible advantage, a massive advantage built through continuous and patient unseen work. He also realized that silence wasn't emotional isolation, it was strategy. He didn't disappear from the world. He simply stepped away from the stage temporarily to build backstage. And that protected space allowed for an identity shift that could never happen under bright lights. Deep internal changes require silent environments. It's like sharpening a blade. If there's too much noise, the process gets disturbed. And as he sharpened this inner blade, something began forming inside him. The mindset of someone who builds without drawing attention. The mindset of someone who knows real power never announces itself, it only acts. And it's exactly this silent transformation that prepares the ground for the next step. The predator mentality, the one that moves with precision, calm, and calculated impact. He began to realize that predators never announce their moves. A lion doesn't warn before it strikes. It simply moves with calm, precision, and absolute confidence. That silent energy became inspiration for his own path. He understood that real power doesn't need stage. Mental toughness grows exactly when no one is clapping. And that understanding triggered an irreversible identity shift. The predator mentality isn't about ferocity, but about self-control. The wolf that leads the pack is always the quiet one. He observes, calculates, waits. And that's exactly what he began to do. Reject haste and embrace relentless focus. While others act on impulse, the predator acts with intention. That simple difference turns fear into strategy and unseen work into a non-negotiable advantage. A predator doesn't chase everything. It chooses the target. And this conscious selection changed the way he managed his energy. Instead of trying to impress everyone, he focused only on what mattered. Study, training, reading, business, everything gained clarity. He eliminated distractions, like a predator ignores false prey. Only what fed real growth remained. And that elevated his mental toughness to another level. A practical example? Think of an experienced investor in the stock market. He doesn't buy shares every day. He waits for the right opportunities. Studies sectors, analyzes fundamentals, observes trends. It's a predator mentality, patience, precision, strategy. And when he enters strong. In personal development, he applied the same logic. Act less, but act better. That type of identity shift separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The predator mentality also requires emotional control. The lion that roars unnecessarily wastes energy. He learned this when he stopped reacting to criticism, gossip, and empty provocations. Reaction was waste, silence was power. That refined self-control became the foundation of his relentless focus. And the more control he developed, the more he saw. Predators only fail when they rush. He discovered an uncomfortable truth. Being ruled by emotion is prey behavior. Predators think, calculate, observe. This more rational posture structured his unseen work with consistency. Every late-night study session, every silent workout, every habit built without an audience became part of an invisible, yet extremely effective, preparation. The world would only see the result later. He also noticed that predators don't compete with everyone. They play an internal game. It doesn't matter who arrived first, who shouted louder, or who received more praise. The predator competes only with its previous version. And that is liberating. This perspective placed his mental toughness in constant growth mode. It was him versus him. And ironically, that sped up all his results. Some days, it even seemed like nothing was happening. But that is the illusion of consistent growth. The Chinese bamboo spends years growing underground before breaking the surface. Predators understand this intuitively. The process is invisible, but never empty. And that understanding fueled his relentless focus. Working without immediate results became a virtue, not a punishment. The most powerful thing about this mentality is that it eliminates the need to prove anything. The predator proves only when it acts, and acts at the right time. He began trusting the process more and the anxiety for recognition less. This internal shift, though quiet, reshaped his relationship with time. A deep, subtle, transformative identity shift. And all of it happened far from the spotlight. And as he embraced this silent, calculated posture, something began to rise within him. The understanding that the journey isn't just strategic, it's also solitary. A necessary, selective, almost ritual solitude. A solitude that shapes and sharpens. And it's exactly this lonely path that begins to call, naturally pulling us toward the next topic. He discovered that solitude wasn't a punishment, but a laboratory. While everyone else was seeking distractions, he began using silence and empty space as tools for growth. Late nights became moments of clarity, not discomfort. Solitude served as a mirror. revealing weaknesses and talents he had never noticed. And that quiet self-analysis started shaping a mental toughness hard to break. That's where his identity shift gained real depth. Over time, he learned that not everyone would understand his path, and that was okay. Great changes always begin invisibly. While many got lost in parties, invitations, and crowded schedules, he chose the discomfort of productive isolation. And in that discomfort, he discovered hidden strengths. The unseen work grew when no one was around to applaud, and each solitary night strengthened his relentless focus. The solitary journey wasn't glamorous. It hurt sometimes, but it was a kind of pain that paid off. He missed some people, but realized that staying around them was keeping him away from himself. So he made a choice. He walked alone until his new version was ready for the world. That quiet courage set him apart. And interestingly, the more he walked alone, the more his mental toughness expanded. A simple example: remember studying for a difficult exam. While your friends played, you stayed locked in your room reviewing pages and pages. On exam day, the difference showed. That's the power of solitude used well. He carried that logic into adulthood. Courses, books, training, all done without witnesses. Because unseen work creates results that noise never can. Solitude also taught him something no one talks about. Discipline isn't born from motivation. It's born from boredom. On those ordinary, repetitive days, when nothing seems to happen, he developed relentless focus simply by continuing, even without energy or inspiration. And that skill is rare. Most people quit because everything feels stuck. He grew precisely when it felt stuck. The solitary journey refines what motivation can't. He realized solitude wasn't emotional isolation, but strategic protection. When you step away from noise, you can think clearly. He began making better decisions, seeing opportunities more clearly, and building stronger habits. This clarity became part of his identity shift, as if he were updating his internal operating system. And all of it happened without depending on external opinions. Naturally, it brought losses. He left people behind, left invitations behind, left empty conversations behind. But he realized none of that mattered for building his future. Each renunciation became a brick in his new foundation. And the most curious part, the more he strengthened himself alone, the more emotionally independent he became. His mental toughness stopped being theory and became lived experience. Some days were heavy. The mind asked, "Is this really worth it?" But then he remembered, every champion goes through this phase before winning. Athletes train alone. Writers write alone. Entrepreneurs build alone. Great transformations are silent before they become obvious. The unseen work accumulated in every late night, and each late night built another piece of him. The solitary journey brought something unexpected: self-confidence. When he saw he could grow without support, he realized he would never be fragile again. This kind of strength is permanent. When you survive your own deserts, no one else can threaten you. This side effect of solitude became one of his greatest victories. Relentless focus became almost second nature. And as he walked through this voluntary desert, something began to change inside him. Pain stopped being an enemy and became a tool. Discomfort became a teacher. And this natural evolution opens the path to the next chapter. When pain doesn't destroy you, it transforms you, deeply and permanently. He discovered that pain, unlike what many believe, doesn't come to destroy anyone. It comes to shape. It's like controlled fire that removes the impurities from metal. At first, he resisted. Of course, who wouldn't? But little by little, he realized that hiding from pain weakened him, while facing it strengthened his mental toughness. And when he accepted that truth, everything changed as a natural part of his identity shift. Pain has a funny way of revealing who is truly committed. Those who want fast results run from it, but those who want real transformation learn to use discomfort as a guide. He understood that when it hurts, it's because he's expanding, and that expansion always happens in the background, in the unseen work. It was there in silence that he learned to breathe, adjust the pace, and keep moving forward. A simple example: the gym. If the muscle doesn't hurt, it doesn't grow. Pain is a sign of adaptation. He carried that lesson to every area: finances, career, habits. He read books like Anti-Fragile, by Nassim Taleb, and realized life works exactly like a muscle. The more well-managed pressure applied, the stronger it becomes. That logic fueled his relentless focus, because now he saw value where he once saw obstacles. Emotional pain also became a tool. Being ignored hurt, being doubted hurt, but he realized that pain wasn't an invitation to quit. It was an invitation to evolve. Every harsh word, rejection, or failure turned into raw material for building his new self. It was as if the world, unknowingly, was giving him bricks to build his internal fortress, and that fortress supported his identity shift. He also learned that pain illuminates paths. Whenever something hurt, it exposed a weak point that needed strengthening. If speaking in public hurt, he trained. If discipline hurt, he adjusted his routine. If comparison hurt, he limited social media. Pain became a compass, and over time, he stopped avoiding it and started asking, "What do you want to teach me today?" That mindset strengthened his mental toughness inevitably. Pain also taught him patience. Real growth doesn't happen at the speed the ego wants. It happens at the speed the character needs. Some lessons took months, others years. But he learned that time isn't the enemy when you learn to work with relentless focus. While many complained, he refined. While many quit, he adjusted. While many cried, he grew in silence. He lived pains no one saw, and that's why they became so valuable. In the unseen work, there is no applause, no praise, no validation. There's only you and the next step. And that next step, repeated thousands of times, turned weakness into solid strength. In that silent pain, he built emotional resistance, the kind that doesn't break, only bends. Pain also removed everything that no longer served him. Empty friendships, bad habits, disguised distractions. It cleared the ground so the new could enter. It hurt to let go, but it hurt even more to realize he had been sabotaging himself. So he began his own pruning process, and every cut increased his clarity. That emotional cleaning became an essential part of his identity shift. Eventually, he saw that pain was no longer an enemy. It was a mentor. Every difficult phase left him calmer, more focused, more prepared. Pain taught presence, taught focus, taught humility, and taught him to appreciate every victory, even the small ones, because only those who have known the darkness truly appreciate the light. And that deep, silent awareness became the foundation of his mental toughness. And as he grew stronger through pain, something bigger began to reveal itself. Power is never demanded, it is earned. Pain was preparing him for that, as if it were the inevitable step before the next layer of the journey. The realization that true power is born only from consistency, effort, and total commitment. He realized that true power doesn't come from shouting. It comes from merit. People who demand respect are usually the ones who've done the least to earn it. Those who build, deliver, and grow don't need to ask for anything. The world senses it. That understanding elevated his mental toughness, because he stopped looking for shortcuts. Instead, he focused on the process. And when the process is strong, the result is inevitable. Power isn't about authority, it's about consistency. The one who shows up every day, even when they don't feel like it, starts building a silent reputation. That's what happened with him. While others searched for instant recognition, he aimed to improve 1% each day. That accumulated relentless focus became the foundation of his identity shift, because those committed to the long term always defeat the short term. He realized that uncompromised effort creates undeniable impact. When someone works quietly, without demanding applause, without begging for praise, the construction becomes pure. And that purity makes all the difference. The unseen work he accumulated for months, sometimes years, began to bear fruit, so naturally it seemed like magic. But it wasn't magic. It was math. Consistent effort equals inevitable outcome. A practical example? Elite athletes. None of them demand to be called champions. They train relentlessly. Michael Jordan arrived earlier and left later than his teammates. Cristiano Ronaldo does extra sessions no camera ever records. They don't ask for power, they earn it. He realized he could apply that to his own life. Studying more, training better, learning faster, and letting results speak for him. Power also comes from discipline, not speeches. He learned that many talk about dominating their own lives, but few do the basics. Wake early, train, save money, study, evolve. He began mastering the basics with calm stubbornness. That daily practice strengthened his mental toughness and removed distractions. The simple done well builds more power than the complex done poorly. Another point, power requires sacrifice. He learned that you can't achieve great things while keeping old habits. So he traded hours of partying for hours of reading, dropped empty conversations for useful courses, replaced laziness with discipline. This bothered some people, but truth is simple. If you want respect, you must first respect yourself. That's where his identity shift deepened. Power also requires competence. People can pretend to be great for a while, but results never lie. He started studying more, learning new skills, refining the old ones. And with that, his confidence grew, not from ego, but from preparation. The more competent he became, the more natural it was to maintain relentless focus. And quiet competence is one of the strongest forms of power. And because it's quiet, many don't notice how far behind they're falling. That's how true power works, discreet, consistent, unquestionable. In the beginning they underestimate. In the middle they ignore. In the end they admire. He learned to love that process. The unseen work became his secret advantage. Those who build in the dark always appear in the light with leverage. Over time, he realized that power isn't something you take. It's something you attract. People naturally respect those with posture, capability, and consistency. There's nothing artificial about it. No need to prove anything. Power comes because he became someone worthy of it. This transformation can't be forced. It happens only when the inner work is done well. And as this new identity grew inside him, something became clear. Power is just one stage of the journey. After earning it, another challenge emerges, learning not to depend on external validation. And that next understanding opens the door to a freedom few ever experience. He realized that seeking external validation was like chasing the wind. You never catch it. And when you think you did, it already disappeared. Every compliment lasted too little. Every criticism hurt too much. But when he started disconnecting from that need, something extraordinary happened. His mental toughness grew like never before. It's liberating to understand that other people's opinions don't pay your bills, nor build your future. That shift sparked a deep identity shift. Most people aren't watching to support. They're watching to compare, judge, or simply gossip. He understood this when he noticed that many were observing his steps, waiting for failures, not victories. So he made a decision. He would no longer live to please silent audiences. And that choice opened space for his relentless focus. Without that emotional anchor, his mind felt lighter, freer, sharper. He had always been someone who sought approval, but he discovered it drained his energy. Instead of thinking about what he wanted to build, he thought about what others would think. That paralyzed him. When he broke that cycle, everything became simpler. He realized that living to please is living imprisoned. And when the prison falls, unseen work becomes far more effective because now it's done for purpose, not appearance. A practical example? Content creators. Those who create thinking about what others will think become paralyzed. They post once, delete 3 times. Those who create to evolve post, learn, adjust, and grow. He applied this to real life. He decided to do what needed to be done even if no one was watching. This emotional independence became one of the pillars of his mental toughness. He also realized that external validation is unstable. One day you're amazing. The next day no one remembers your name. Basing your identity on that would be emotional suicide. So he began building internal fortresses: knowledge, discipline, self-control, purpose. These bricks didn't depend on anyone. That silent movement strengthened his identity shift in unexpected ways. And of course, when he stopped seeking validation, he began hearing his own voice. What did he truly want? What made sense? Which goals were his? And which were just other people's expectations? This honesty opened space for more aligned decisions. The inner silence became more valuable than the external noise. And his relentless focus reached a new level of precision. Interestingly, when he stopped chasing validation, his productivity skyrocketed. Without trying to impress, he He felt lighter. Without trying to please, he moved faster. Without trying to prove, he grew deeper. Unseen work flowed naturally. He finally realized he didn't need anyone to see his effort for it to matter. Effort matters on its own. External validation also lost power when he understood that only one audience truly matters: himself. At the end of the day, he began measuring progress by his own standards, not by the opinions of others. And that is rare. Most people still live for invisible likes, but not him. He chose to live for evolution. That change redefined his mental toughness permanently. The feeling of emotional freedom grew to the point of transforming his routine. Now he made bold decisions without fear. He changed habits, changed priorities, changed environments. The identity shift wasn't just psychological, it was behavioral. He finally began living his own life, not the one others expected from him. And that gave a different shine to his journey. And as he distanced himself from the need for validation, something even more powerful emerged: the birth of a silent conqueror, the one who evolves internally without needing to announce externally. And it is this inner evolution that opens the path to the next chapter: the methodical rise of someone no one believed in until he became impossible to ignore. He realized his evolution didn't happen overnight. It happened in layers, like a warrior slowly forged in fire. Each fall, each mistake, each lonely late night accumulated like invisible bricks. At first, nothing seemed to change. But quietly, his mental toughness was being built. And when he finally noticed, he was no longer the same person. The identity shift was in full motion. A conqueror's evolution is never explosive, it's methodical. He learned to walk with relentless focus, one step at a time, without skipping stages. He understood that big victories start small, sometimes almost invisible. The daily unseen work became a sacred routine. He did it because it needed to be done. And when that needs to be done became natural, growth accelerated. He began noticing patterns he once ignored. He realized that discipline creates direction, and direction creates destiny. While others chased motivation, he built habit. And habit always wins over motivation, because habit doesn't depend on mood. In that steady, almost silent rhythm, his mental toughness solidified. It was like watching a mountain grow, slow, but inevitable. A practical example? Someone learning English. In the first month, nothing changes. In the second, it still seems the same. But after 6 months of podcasts, books, and series without subtitles, evolution erupts. He applied this logic to his life. Training, studying, reading, everything gained consistency. The results started small, then multiplied. That's the power of accumulated unseen work. He also discovered that evolution requires ignoring distractions. Every conqueror goes through phases where the world tries to pull them down: comments, comparisons, doubts. But he learned to filter all of that. He created an internal priority system, almost like a radar that identifies only what matters. That radar became part of his identity shift, strengthening his focus and clarity. Over time, he began acting like someone who had already arrived, not out of arrogance, but posture. He took care of his health with discipline, organized his finances, planned his days, treated his word like a contract. That behavior raised his standards. And when standards rise, results follow. Internal evolution always precedes external evolution. That's the invisible mathematics of conquerors. Something interesting happened. He no longer needed to convince himself of anything. Before, he needed motivational phrases to continue. Now, he continued naturally. When discipline becomes identity, effort decreases. Relentless focus stopped being a battle and became a lifestyle. This change transformed his routine and further strengthened his mental toughness. At every stage, he became stronger, calmer, more prepared. Not because nothing affected him, but because everything trained him. Losses matured him. Difficulties sharpened him. Criticism shaped him. He turned every situation into a tool. Evolution stopped being something that happened to him and became something that happened because of him. That's how a conqueror is formed, through pure intentionality. And the most impressive part was realizing that what once felt like punishment became advantage. Falls became learning. Failures became fuel. Mistakes became maps. He began seeing life as a constant training ground. When everything becomes training, everything becomes growth. And that silent growth creates an advantage no one can take away. As he accumulated these layers of evolution, a clear truth emerged. Every conqueror reaches a point where success stops being the goal and becomes a consequence. And it is this inevitable consequence that opens the way to the next chapter, when success becomes the most brutal and silent revenge. He discovered that success doesn't need to be announced, explained, or defended. It simply happens. When someone truly grows, the entire world notices, even if you don't say a word. That silent perception is powerful. It hurts those who doubted and inspires those who watched. For him, this became motivation, to turn all the accumulated unseen work into an elegant and definitive response. Success as revenge isn't about hurting anyone. It's about proving to yourself that you were capable all along. He realized that nothing shuts down criticism more effectively than concrete results. It wasn't shouting, it was evidence. This understanding strengthened his mental toughness, because each step stopped being emotional and became strategic. He grew not out of anger, but out of clarity. Silent revenge is the most brutal because it doesn't argue, it shows. Those who laugh fall silent. Those who doubted observe. Those who underestimated regret it. And he understood that this impact is much stronger when it comes without announcements. So he kept his relentless focus intact. While others wasted energy talking, he spent energy evolving. And consistent evolution always turns skepticism into shock. A practical example? Someone underestimated in school who is now financially stable, disciplined, and emotionally mature. When they meet old classmates, they don't need to say anything. Their lifestyle speaks for them. He began imagining this for himself, not from ego, but from internal justice. Success born from preparation is the most elegant response possible. He also discovered that success as revenge isn't just about results, but posture. When you decide to grow every day, regardless of who supports you or not, you create rare emotional independence. That movement strengthened his identity shift, because now his identity wasn't tied to the past. People who once tried to diminish him no longer had any power. A curious thing is that when you are truly evolving, you no longer have energy to prove anything to anyone. Your focus changes. He no longer wanted to impress. He wanted to build. He no longer wanted approval. He wanted progress. And once that mentality took hold, unseen work flowed naturally. There was no rush, no desperation. There was consistency. And consistency always becomes impossible to ignore. He also realized he didn't need to post his evolution for it to be real. All he needed was to maintain the rhythm. And that simplicity freed his mind. While others tried to be seen, he tried to improve. While others chased applause, he chased competence. That strengthened his mental toughness and turned each small victory into a silent reminder that he was on the right path. The best part of this revenge is that it doesn't destroy others, it builds you. He began feeling proud of each small achievement because he knew that no one had seen what he endured to reach them. That feeling of private victory is one of the most powerful forces for growth. It reinforces the identity shift and creates a sense of internal confidence that cannot be taken away. And when some results finally appeared, a better body, a stronger mind, a structured routine, new opportunities, he understood something profound. Success doesn't respond to attacks. It silences them. Criticism that once hurt disappeared. Judgment that once paralyzed him no longer mattered. Relentless focus became fuel, not weight. He was in control. And as this silent success grew, a new understanding appeared. Success is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of the legacy. Because after proving to himself that he can rise, something even bigger emerges. The desire to build something that lasts. And this natural transition opens the way to the next topic. When the work stops being about growing and starts being about leaving a permanent mark, he realized that legacy isn't built from what you say, but from what you sustain over the years. A legacy is built in the details, in daily choices, in the silent discipline few ever see. While some live chasing attention, he began chasing real impact. The kind that remains even when you're no longer in the room. This mature vision strengthened his mental toughness and prepared the ground for a definitive identity shift. An unshakable legacy is born in darkness, not in spotlights. In late nights of study, in silent training sessions, in sacrifices no one saw. He realized that everything he was building behind the scenes would become the foundation of something much greater. The unseen work, once invisible, became the root of a solid future. And every silent action fed his relentless focus, which now seemed impossible to break. He understood that legacy isn't about achieving everything, but about building something meaningful. It can be your career, your health, your mindset, your family, your spiritual growth. The important thing is leaving your environment better than you found it. And for that, you don't need fame. You need consistency. He realized that living with intention is what separates a common life from a memorable one. A practical example? Someone who decides to change their family story. Saving money, reading books, studying investments, creating habits no one before had created. That is legacy, even if no one sees it now. He adopted that posture. He began creating growth rituals that would leave deep marks. It's a type of construction that doesn't depend on opinions, only actions. Over time, he realized his legacy was being shaped by how he faced challenges, not by what he achieved, but by what he overcame. Every difficult moment became a future story. Every silent victory became a foundation that gave new meaning to the journey. He understood that his mental toughness wasn't just a tool. It was part of what he would leave to the world. Legacy also demands emotional courage. He had to cut old cycles, abandon destructive patterns, and recreate himself multiple times. This painful but necessary process built a much stronger emotional foundation, and this stability became an essential part of his identity shift. Now he wasn't living just to improve. He was living to leave a mark. He discovered that legacy doesn't depend on age, but on decision. Some start early, others start late, but all start the same way, taking the first step alone. He decided he wanted to be remembered for his posture, not his ego, for his discipline, not his words, for his ability to transform, not for his desire to impress. That clarity elevated his relentless focus, and the more he walked, the more he realized that legacy is what stands even when no one is watching. That's why he started doing the right thing even in anonymity. He didn't need to prove anything. He didn't need anyone to see. He did it because it was who he had become. Unseen work stopped being strategy and became character. And solid character doesn't collapse, not even in storms. Over time, people around him began noticing changes, not because he announced them, but because they became impossible to ignore. A true legacy works like that. Silent, deep, consistent. He began inspiring without trying to inspire, influencing without trying to influence, teaching without trying to teach. When the example exists, impact becomes automatic. And as his legacy took shape, a thought began to grow inside him. Now that I know who I am and what I've built, what comes next? That question opened a new horizon, because after solidifying a legacy, the next step is turning it into a mission. And that naturally connects the end of this topic with the beginning of your future introduction, where everything starts gaining greater purpose. Now that you've heard all of this, take a deep breath and look at your own life. How many times did you stop moving forward because someone said you weren't capable? How many times did you believe more in external voices than in the strength that was already inside you? The truth is simple. No one will fight this battle for you, but you've already shown you can. Just being here, seeking growth, proves you refuse to be a spectator in your own life. Think with me. What do you need to start today to break this cycle? Which habit have you been postponing? Which project have you left in the drawer? Which version of yourself have you been avoiding becoming? What you learned here only works if you apply it. Success doesn't respond to promises. It responds to action. And your life is calling for movement right now. So let me ask you sincerely. Will you continue living the way others expect, or finally live the way you were meant to? Will you keep believing in empty opinions, or lean on your own potential? Will you continue being underestimated, or surprise the entire world? This is on you. Only you can take this step. Only you know what's hurting inside. And before you leave this video, do something important. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Here, you'll find exactly what you need to continue this process. Strength, clarity, direction, and that dose of truth few people have the courage to say. Don't walk alone. Walk with me, because the next version of your life starts now, and you don't want to miss what comes next.